Um, that spoke a lot. That chapter there is in Death of an Ego and I am who I am, not what I do. That chapter really focuses on a very difficult time in my life where I was fired from my role. Again, I talk about it in the book. I don't think the solution is to rip up the playbook or rip up the script, but I think it's really important for the script to have almost our old choose your own adventure novels, where you've got the ability to be able to action your passion, to be purposeful, to have the encouragement to identify with who you are, what your purpose is, and be able to live a rich life doing so that doesn't cause anxiety or depression.
Welcome to the podcast that guides men to demystify and develop their intuition. I'm your host, Doug Bites. Let's dig into the science and expand your horizons. My guest today is Dion Elliot Jansen, author of Conscious Footsteps. Dion is a parent, a partner, and a seeker, someone who's walked through love, loss, truth, and transformation. Based here in Australia, Dion has spent much of his life creating, building, and reflecting, often at the intersection of business, creativity, and the human spirit. His work explores what it means to live with presence and purpose, and how easily we lose connection with our inner knowing in a world that is constantly pulls us outward. Dion doesn't speak from a stage or a polished platform. He writes from lived experience. His words emerge from those quieter moments where awareness and honesty meet, offering a grounded perspective on intuition, self-trust, and what it really means to listen from within. Conscious Footsteps is his first book, and it's an invitation for us to slow down, reconnect, and begin trusting that inner voice again. Dion, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. And when we spoke a week or two ago, whenever it was, I said to you, because you approached me with the release of your book, and I had the option of receiving a book or not, or just progressing with the podcast. And I said to him, please don't go on anyone's podcast unless they've read your book first, because it is so good. Like for someone to produce their first book, I've thought of writing a book many times, but that's as far as it's gone. It's, to me, major effort, like major. And how do you pull this together? And I'm going to hold it up here. Conscious Footsteps. It's brilliant. It's not a long book, but it's obviously not a novel. It's not designed to be read in one sitting. It's, you can pick it up and start reading wherever you want. So I'm curious now, when you started to, as people read the book, they will get your story. When you started to put those words down on paper, was it healing? Was it a way to better understand yourself?
Yes. I mean, for want of a better classification for it, it's yes. It was very much a cathartic experience, but it was never set out and write a book and use that experience as one that is cathartic. I was writing in diaries as just a way to process my emotions and my feelings and my experiences that I was having. And as you alluded to, there's some quite tumultuous ones at the start of the book that I refer to. But as I started writing more and more, I felt kind of the need to bring all of those together, because I don't think that when you're learning or you're developing or you're growing, it's kind of a finite process and you stop. I think there's a lot of benefit in going back to recognize where you've come from or to understand those lessons a bit deeper with added experience. But I will always say that I'm an accidental author, because I didn't set out to write a book. It just came to be after a few years of reflection. And kind of the tipping point for me to put it into a book was the experiences that I went through. I don't think they're very much unique, but I think there are a lot of people that may be searching for answers or for a way to process themselves. And I felt if I could be as vulnerable as possible and that would help at least one person, then it was worthwhile turning into a book. Coincidentally, the book, though, has become a really great resource for me. Even though it's written and finished and out there in the world, I can still refer back to it. And I still am triggered or remember a particular learning that I have or that I may have forgotten, because it is a constant practice in that sense of self-development.
So do you go back at times and read parts of it yourself now?
Yeah, I would pick it up at least once a week.
Well, here's the weird thing. And when I first started doing this, I thought I was weird. I actually enjoy listening to my podcasts. I do. And sometimes if I just don't know what to listen to, I'll go to Spotify, bring my thing up, and then I just flick back, give it 3 or 4 good flicks with my finger and just randomly hit one. And then it's usually what I need to hear. And it's not me talking because I'm just interviewing, but it's whatever the guest that week was talking about. And it's like, yeah.
Exactly. It could have a lot to do with your present energetic state, the lens that you're viewing life through at that particular point in time. We don't absorb, or I believe we don't absorb every bit of information at every point in time. We would just be overwhelmed if we did. So I see a lot of benefit, not just in the book itself, but similar to what you're saying, in going back and rehashing, particularly something that had a point of resonance with you previously. There's always something deeper that you can go with it, or may just hit in a different way on the second, third, fourth, fifth occasion.
Exactly. And I've always told my sons, you become what you surround yourself with. And that is one of many reasons I do the podcast, because right now I'm hanging around you. 2 hours ago, I was hanging around another interesting man and we were recording and we're sharing with the world these conversations. But it's very beneficial to me too, on a selfish way, that I get to hang around cool people, and very good. So from next moves here in the podcast, I've got quite a few sections in the book I've got highlighted with, half parts of sentences that we can talk through. Or would you prefer to start to tell your story of what the listeners are going to get in the book, or do you just want to go through the parts?
I can give a brief overview of what I won't spoil the story as such for the listeners.
Well, that's what I was wondering. Yeah.
But the book, I should say from the outset, like you alluded to, it's not meant to be read from cover to cover in one sitting. By all means, if that is what the reader chooses to do, so be it. But I took a bit of an alternate approach. I'm a really avid walker, and I do a lot of great thinking and processing when I'm out in nature. It could just be a walk by the river or a hike, whatever it may be. And I find that time very peaceful, and I can play things through in my mind and have them wash over me. So I actually wrote the book in a series of walks, and it's intended to be taken on a literal walk. It's kind of that offer or invitation to have a pause, read a walk, and then go on a literal walk and see what further processing about the topics can really do for the reader. That's not to say that every chapter is going to resonate with the reader, but it might just be a chapter for a different time. It doesn't necessarily be for the present time. And that's what I think. It's useful as an ongoing resource, because although there is linear progression to the way that the walks are written, they can also be read as standalones. So with that said, the book really focuses on a very much tumultuous series of changes in my life. That's how it opens up, and really talks about the death of the ego and the identity that I clung to so heavily and for so long, and so earnestly protected as well. And then it goes through the process of me dealing with that ego and identity death to really go within and to understand more about who I am and to unravel who I am, and then stepping into my authentic life and living from a place of authenticity. And then I'm happy to say it ends in a very positive and happy sense, but it is very, very raw. I leave nothing unsaid. So you get the full gamut of emotions, success, happiness, tears, death, depression, anxiety. It's all covered within there, because I would hate for anybody to feel that any emotion that they may be having is not one that can't be contended with or challenged with or spoken about when they're reading the book.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was thinking that we won't spoil it for the readers on where we go, but just something I've highlighted here on one page I've got in here. It's got something else began to speak, a quieter truth. I began to notice what lit me up. What was going on around that time?
That kind of is relevant to a few parts, but if I had to summarize what was general across all of those, I think as people, we are taught, trained, programmed to live a certain way and with a certain series of masks. And very few of us get the privilege, and I very deliberately use the word privilege, to have the confidence and comfort to turn up in life without a mask. They turn up as their authentic selves. And then for me, it was about challenging whether or not that mask has a resonance with who I truly am, the core of my identity. And then when I started to view the world through that identity, I realized what lit me up. There's also an interesting thing that I found on the path of finding what you are, is you can also really begin to explore what you're not. And in understanding what you're not, you almost by default then understand what you are, and also conversely as well. So we don't necessarily need to know who am I or what am I, but you can also uncover who am I not or what am I not.
Very interesting. Yeah. Further down that same page, it says, I don't need to be someone to be me.
Yeah. That spoke a lot. That chapter there is in Death of an Ego and I am who I am, not what I do. That chapter really focuses on a very difficult time in my life where I was fired from my role. And while on its own, it's a traumatic experience, what was really most traumatic for me is because I was hiding aspects of myself. And I'll be careful with the words I choose and not spoil the story too much, but because I was hiding aspects of myself, I took a lot of comfort and scaffolded my entire identity around what I did. And who I turned up as in the corporate world became who I was. And that became my identity. So when that identity was stripped away from me, it was extremely difficult. Just repeat that sentence again, sorry, because I've gone a bit off tangent and I'll come back to it, but that's the kind of the behind story for it.
I don't need to be someone to be me.
So as that identity began to fall away, I realized that some of the roles that I was playing as a person in the corporate world, or as a provider, or as a husband, they were simply roles. And I didn't have to be in those roles in order for me to be me and to turn up authentically in the world.
Yeah. And then I've gone over into the next chapter, and it's kind of a little bit similar. It says, I depended on others to feel successful. So that would, I guess, play out into the corporate as well.
Exactly. And the power of the ego. One of the opening lines that I've got in I am who I am, not what I do, is job roles really only serve kind of two purposes. It's firstly for my ego to feel good, and it's also for others to know who to go to when they want something to feel good. So part of that is realizing that it is somewhat a false identity or a mask that we put on. And for us to be who we want to be, we don't need to stand behind a role in order to be that.
Yeah. All right. A little bit further on, it's got, I was being controlled, not by people, but by my own self-imposed fear. I mean, that jumped out to me because I have so many different fears in my life.
Yeah. And I think we've got, everyone has a lot of fear, and it can wear kind of many faces as well. Fear can turn up as lack. It can turn up of fear of the unknown, fear of death, fear of being judged. The biggest thing with fear, and I spent a lot of time around fear because it gave me a real insight. I went deep within. I had anxiety. I had very bad depression, and it took a long time for me to come out of those states. But what I did really realize is, and it's my opening quote in the book before it actually starts to get going, it's about having fears that are coming from memories, which is the past, and anxiety is essentially fears of what could happen in the future. So we get stuck in this space where we, as individuals, it's very rarely coming from the outside in. It's very much an internal thing. We spend a lot of time worrying about what's happened in the past and then projecting those things on that could potentially happen in the future. And it affects our present state. And then as that present state is influenced, all that really changes is the date and time. You just continue on projecting to the past or the future. And that's really alluding to that passage that you just read out, is alluding to the fact that we are in control of those emotions and of that fear.
Yeah. So a couple of chapters down now, we've got, just because someone handed you a script doesn't mean you have to keep reading from it. I love that one.
Yeah, so that's in a chapter called "The Stories That We Are Told," and we're told a lot of stories in life, and that's why I used the word programmed previously, because we are being subconsciously programmed. We subconsciously program others, particularly as parents, when we are parenting our children as well. And those scripts can turn up in various ways. I mean, we could explore religion as a script. We can explore the news as a script. We can explore parentage as a script. But a real challenge in understanding who you are and who you're not is also about understanding what scripts you're actually reading from, and then being able to make a conscious decision if there's a lack of resonance with those scripts as to, why do I currently believe that? Do I need to believe that moving into the future? Or can I flip it on its head? Can I just put that script down? And that's a real powerful mechanism to begin to understand yourself a bit more, is to understand where those beliefs have come from and if you really do hold them true yourself.
Yeah, so just recognizing that you are reading from a script I think is a huge thing to realize, because there's some books I read years ago. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, called, they're nicknamed called the Seth books, by a lady called Jane Roberts, channeled it through. This is back in the 60s and 70s. And she gives one analogy there is, we are like actors on a stage reading from a script, but we are so engrossed in our character. And this is where I'm talking about recognizing you're reading from a script, because the bulk of us don't. You are so engrossed that it's like you are on the stage in complete darkness and the spotlight is only on you, and you can't even see the audience. Like, you have no idea. And you might get to a bit and you forget your line, and several people from the audience are shouting it out, like, Doug, say this, like, you remember, it's this bit. And we're like, is that a voice? Is someone trying to help me through this thing? Because I forget this is what's going on. I'm so, and the thing is, I wrote the script.
Yes.
And I can, and if I don't like the script, when we go from scene 1 to scene 2, I can go at the back and cross a few bits out, and I can change the act, and I can say to my, person who's helping me with, in the whole, who's part of the next star as well, I can say, hey, we're not going to go this way in this time. We're going to go the other way. I just want to try what will happen if we do this. And they might look at you too, like, hang on, that's not in the script.
Yes.
It's like the floppy disk in the side of the head. And we're just
exactly
just recognizing.
I really love that analogy. It's great. Yeah, I've not read those books. I think a real common one. I mean, we could, not to be too controversial and go down the scripts in religion, etc., but or in politics. But if you think about the script that we give to children, so we say to kids, go to school. When you're at school, you need to pick a vocation that you're going to stick with for the next 50 to 60 years. You'll then either go to university or you'll do trade or technical, whatever the nuance in the script may be. And then you will work and you will stand on that treadmill and you will buy a house. It's probably a script from a few years ago if we expecting them to buy homes, but buy a house, have a family, and then God forbid you try and get off that script, and how difficult it is for the kids to chart courses that is out of that script. And the system just doesn't support it or necessarily allow room for it unless it's seen as alternative. And I just think that's a real present day example that we can allude to, that's a lifelong script in a lifelong play.
I know. But then the other alternative now that I'm hearing, and I'm not saying this is true because I'm 62, so I don't live in this world, but you've now got the 18 to 24-year-olds who have sort of heard that script and they've sort of like, I don't think that's a very good idea. And, and it's obvious that they're not sticking with one job all their life anymore. That, every year or two or three, they're flicking to a new role, and which is fine. Yes. And I'm not criticizing that. But they also have, I would think, in the back of their mind an uncertainty and an anxiety about the future because, I didn't have that anxiety about my future because I got married at 20. I'd already been working for 5 years. I actually had a mortgage 6 months before we got married. Like I just did all this crazy stuff really early. So I just had my head down, tail up, and was just plowing through, working 2 jobs to pay the mortgage, pay the new car loan, the whole thing. So I didn't have any uncertainty about my future. Whereas, but I didn't have any variety or potential or say in it because I was reading from the script that was put in my lap, and the pages were a bit torn on the edges because my parents had handed it to me and their parents had handed it to them. It was an old piece of paper we were all looking after. But I guess on the other side is it's fine to break free from that, but I'm wondering how these younger people are feeling about the changes in the world. Are they able to then grasp a new paradigm for themselves where they can not feel anxious about the future? I'm not sure because I've never gone down that road. I'd love the idea of the freedom and heading where you want to head, but where's that script? And yes. Are we humans? Do we need a script? Are we made to have a script? I don't know.
Well, I think it's wonderful and really exciting that the new generation have the ability to challenge the script and say, I'm not going to read from that. But I think it's a terrible indictment on society that in order to do that, in order to be more purposeful potentially for them, in order to find something that they're passionate about and not necessarily have to wear a mask to do it, that it's anxiety inducing. And that's that's the space that we need to create as a society. And again, I talk about it in the book. I don't think the solution is to rip up the playbook or rip up the script, but I think it's really important for the script to have almost our old choose your own adventure novels, where you've got the ability to be able to action your passion, to be purposeful, to have the encouragement to identify with who you are, what your purpose is, and be able to live a rich life doing so that doesn't cause anxiety or depression. Yeah. And that's where I think, as I said, that's where our challenge is now.
So another analogy I like to use on life, I was not highly educated, so I've got to dumb everything down to my level of thinking. Have you ever played the computer game like Mario Kart?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So You're in there, you're heading around, we're doing lap after lap, you're in front of me. Every time I sort of try and do whatever, the mud, you hit the mud, it sprays all over me. I can't see, I go out of control. But eventually we learn, oh, on the third corner, if I take it wide, like the long way round, I'm not going to get sprayed with mud and I won't crash. So we learn these, the script, we start to learn it. And as you go through the levels and the levels, all the tracks really are very similar. The creator has not made a huge variety, but maybe if we learned, instead of like racing cars, we decided to become computer programmers, we could come up with a much different track. It's like, I'm sick of this track. They put different trees up, they put different things up to make it look different, but it's just history repeating as we go lap after lap. Let's, Dion, you and I, let's go off over here and design our own track. And
yes.
And we're going to race airplanes, not cars. We're going to be in the air, or we're going to race submarines underwater. And everyone's like, whoa, radical. But I guess if society provided, and would it be a script if we were providing to this younger generation that, yes, you can have a sense of purpose, you can dream, you can go off and do these things you want to do. We need some examples. And, the example I gave you of my life is not, it's just was locked in. And I have gone off and run my own script a few times. I've had, a good government job, and I resigned from and moved to a tropical island in the middle of nowhere and did that for a while. But have we got enough examples wandering around giving assurance to this younger generation that they can write their own script? To help relieve the anxiety so they can walk into creativity instead of, use their energy purposefully rather than negatively, I guess.
And probably not for a while either, particularly while as a society, we so intrinsically link success with output and success with money and wealth and building. One of the last chapters, being spiritual in the material world, we have to eat. We have to live in a home. We have to have shelter. But I think when we have so many examples and the script puts on a pedestal obscene wealth examples as the only litmus test of success, it becomes very difficult for the stewards of the next generation, generally parents, to be able to say, there are many avenues or directions that you can take. But the challenge for us is to demonstrate success in its various forms, not just link it to output and money.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, it is tough that way. And I know at my age, we ran a business. We did really well financially when we came out of it. And I work 2 days a week now. Been able to do that. But it's hard for me to say to my 4 children, just back off, just do 2 days a week, because you and I don't live physically that far away. We know what the real estate market's like around within 100 kilometers of where we live. It's ridiculously off the charts, and compared to the income levels, it's real tough. So the kids look at me and go like, Dad, I've got to work 6 days a week, not 2, just to live the lifestyle and to follow the script of what the world says we need to have, like the type of accommodation I need to live in and all that sort of thing. And a lot of their script was based on what my wife and I, the example we gave.
Yes.
We didn't show them the script. We lived it,
Yes.
And we had the mortgage at 20, brand new car at 20 on a loan, it was like, it's like, anyway, it's,
and that's been a lot of my kind of learning and unlearning, where I only linked my success to the holidays I took, the house I lived in, the car I drove, the watch I wore, the restaurants I ate at. But I've also come to realize those things are still important to me. But if I have to link my identity to those things and I have to perform and have an output 6-7 days a week, 365 days a year, 52 weeks a year, then it's not necessarily my purpose that's coming to the fore. It's my ego that's being scaffolded there. And my biggest realization is those things are wonderful and they're not important. But if they define who I am, and I believe I'm a better person only when I achieve them, then some self-reflection is required.
Yeah. All right. The next little highlight. Some of the greatest healing in my life has come not from learning something new, but from unlearning what I was told. And I guess we've sort of half covered that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. What have I got in next? And then I've got at some point, often in a moment of crisis, pain, or awakening, we begin to hear a quieter voice. And, you know, the podcast is about men developing their intuition. So that quieter voice, would you call it intuition for you?
I'd definitely call it intuition. I mean, we could put any label on it. I think some of the dangers with labels is if it doesn't resonate with a particular person in a different way, they believe they don't have it. And then it can cause it to become more and more distant. So whether we call it intuition, whether we call it a gut feel, whether it's called just a knowing, my belief is the more you can align yourself with that, the more courage you've got to align your decisions and your behaviors to that feeling, whatever it may be called for you, the more in alignment with your purpose and your true self you can live. And generally, it's the masks of the ego that tell us to ignore or deafens that feeling. And I think it's a wonderful challenge for all of us to try and lean in more to what it's trying to tell us.
Mm. Now, a lot further on in the book, up in the chapter on the purpose of love, love lives in the small, in the ordinary, in the daily choices we make without fanfare. So, again, I guess lives in the small, and I like to think of the still small voice within as our intuition. And
so that chapter, or that walk, I should say, it opens with the only true emotion that we know when we come out of the womb is love. Everything beyond that, we're taught or programmed or scripted, whether it's hate, greed, everything. We are taught what they are, but love is the only true sincere one. Then when you layer on top of that all of the different ways that love turns up and has then been commercialized for us. So whether it's Valentine's Day, it must be a big outpouring of grand gesture. It's linked too much to sex. It is linked to gender roles. It's linked to expectation. So when I talk about it being in the small, love, and you could call it your intuition or your inner knowing, is that pure place where the modern definition of love is ignored, and it's that outpouring of goodness or of light, if you will, that you can go about your daily life with. And that may be as simple as something like holding a door open, making a cup of coffee, watching the sunrise, all of those good feelings or that sense of positive energy. That's love living in the small spaces. And once you feel a sense of comfort with that, it can then open up into how you love externally. But it's not around loving for an expectation of receiving something in return. It's just a love as an outpouring of who you are or who we are as individuals. An outpouring of light is probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Beautiful. I'll flick to the next one here. Tell the truth. Tell it all. Someone out there needs it.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what you've done with the book.
Correct. And I mentioned at the start, my kind of litmus was if it could help one person, it was worthwhile doing. The vulnerability was really important to me because someone out there needs to know that they're not alone if they're reading the book, and that it's a safe space for them to be able to begin challenging their own beliefs or find a bit of comfort within the pages. So that feeling of tell it all, tell the truth, leave no stone unturned was really important to me. And I hope when the reader reads it, they can see from the gravity of the topics covered and how the storyline kind of unfolds within the arc of the book itself. That I've done that, and that they will then feel safe and secure enough to potentially pass that gift on to somebody else.
So, talking about intuition for men, is it something that you've noticed just recently in your life, or is it, when did you even, did you have a point in your life where you started to realize there was a still small voice, or whatever, there's some different feeling at times that was guiding you that wasn't your normal five senses?
Yes. But what I found is as my ego took more and more hold, that voice got more and more stifled and would have to yell even louder to even be heard at most points when the ego's at its peak. It was just being flat out ignored. And again, if I talk about more of that identity piece with I am who I am, not what I do, it's easy for us to talk about men. It's a topic of the podcast, so we'll go down that path. But I think it's relevant to both genders. My real life example is think about when you're meeting somebody new. That conversation automatically goes to, oh, what do you do for work? And depending on what that answer is, we then just have an interaction based on what we do for work, and all of my subconscious bias I pour onto you. So, Doug, if we met for the first time and you tell me you're a astrophysicist, I would go, okay, he's an astrophysicist, clearly extremely intelligent, might be a bit socially awkward. All of my bias would come out onto you. It could have completely nothing to do with you whatsoever. The two examples I use in the book, you've got a doctor and you've got an Uber driver. I can almost guarantee you 95 times out of 100, people would subconsciously bias the doctor over the Uber driver purely because of their output, usually monetarily, how successful they will be. And what's really subconscious is how of use can this person be to me as well. So when we are playing in a paradigm or in a society where we've got all of that bias, our inner voice becomes extremely suppressed because we are so surface level that we aren't getting down into the deep where that light, that intuition lives, and listening to it. Because it's our ego that's up here that's going, I'll drive this situation. I want to be seen as good or better or best in this situation. And we just keep going and we live behind those roles. And you see it all the time, particularly with men. It's particularly in Australia too, where we've got this kind of sense of toxic masculinity and that men need to turn up and perform and behave and look and speak in a certain way. Yeah, and I think, it's globally relevant too. You look at Netflix now, there's a Louis Theroux documentary on the manosphere. They're like, this is intrinsic behavior in a lot of Western civilizations, right? Where men have to be men. God forbid we could listen to that voice that we've got inside us and be led by that and our authentic selves. But hopefully that'll be the script soon enough.
Yeah. And what shocked me in that thing, apart from the way the men were behaving, is the way the ladies were behaving, knowing they were going into the situation, knowing they were going to be treated terribly, just so that their social media thing would blow up. Like when their followers would observe them being abused, like verbally, it's like, what is going on here? The intelligence level was just like, do you think they're using their intuition, either of them? It's like
definitely not. Definitely not.
And as we said earlier, it's a shame things are driven by money, and that's what's driving them. And then, yeah, so hence my journey of trying to educate people to use their intuition so they can discern these things and they can look at that stuff and just go, yeah, I'm not following that. I'm interested in what they're doing for what they're doing. Yes, but there's not enough intelligence in what they're saying for me to follow along. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
It's not that I'm not saying they're 100% wrong or whatever, but there's an element of truth in some things they say. There is everywhere. Doesn't matter what you hear, what you're watching, listening, reading. There's always, it's either 1% or 99% true. But yeah, you've got to be able to discern and recognize it. And
yes, I think the easiest way, if I had to make it a bit more kind of tangible for one of the listeners to take away and say, when am I using it? When am I not? If on reflection or even in the moment, you're doing it because of a need to perform, then you're not using your intuition.
Yeah. And also too, you talked earlier about masks, like those people in that Manosphere doco, like the masks that they're putting on, taking off, like as soon as the camera comes on, they put 7 masks on, like.
Exactly. Exactly. And again, that is tiring. I mean, they are heightened examples. They're very extreme examples of the manosphere, and they've got, unfortunately, a huge following of men who are searching and have that emptiness, so they're looking for a role model. But in general, day-to-day life, and I speak 100% from experience, if you are being someone that you're not and you're constantly having to put that mask on, it is tiring. And it's exhausting, and it can't go on forever.
Yeah. And those men who do follow along those influences, that's part of my motivation to get the message out to men. What is your intuition? It is a superpower when you tap in and use it, and you will be your own person. You won't have to rely on these other people for your inspiration, etc. They'll be able to go within, as you allude to in your book a lot, about going inside ourselves and being led that way. And because everybody needs a different answer. There's no correct answer for the world. There's 8.2 billion different answers for all of us. We all have what's right for you, Dion, is not necessarily right for me. You might have your coffee with 1 sugar, and I might have it without sugar. And that's just how our bodies need it. It's what we appreciate on a sense of taste. That's one thing, but it's also potentially, without us knowing, it might be what our bodies need. I might need no sugar, and you might need 1 sugar in your coffee, for your metabolism. I don't know. So, for me to say sugar's bad for everybody in their coffee, and I might need 2 coffees a day. You might need 1.5. But how do you know that? You go within, you get a sense of things. It's that the heavens don't open and go, Doug, you need 1.5 cups of coffee today. There's nothing like that happens. You just get inner knowings. And
Doug, I think that's a really important point. Spirituality, to me, I mean, again, it's whatever label we choose to put on it, but we're essentially all talking about the same thing. None of this is like a lightning bolt from the heavens where you get this experience that will tell you that you're doing the right thing. It's more of that internal knowing. You'll find resonance, definitely. It will start to feel right. But I used to feel it about meditation. I used to always wonder how people could meditate, and it seemed so esoteric to me, and it seemed wonderful. And I expected them to be having these fireworks going off in their mind when they would sit there and be able to meditate for an hour. And I used to always wonder, when I sat there and meditated, when I first began to do it, around why it wasn't happening to me, and I must be doing it wrong. There is no, like you say, right or wrong way, but an individual will feel a sense of rightness or resonance where they just know that they are doing the right thing and are on the right path.
Yeah. All right. So I've got one final highlighted section from the book, and it says, to my future self who needed this book to exist. Let's go there.
Yes. So if you had told me I would be who I am today, 4 or 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I would have probably run away from you as fast as I possibly could and pretended that that conversation never existed. It's been a truly wild ride and an absolutely incredible amount of pain, but also an incredible amount of success and joy has come from it as well. So when I say to my future self, um, I don't believe when you go within and you discover who you are, that there's a finite point that you stop and you run that race and it's all over and you move on to the next one. I think this is really a journey that continues and will continue until the day I die. So when I write to my future self who needed this, I didn't know how much I needed it to get to now. And in another 10 years' time, I won't know how much I needed the rest of the journey to get me to there.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And so this is your first book. Is there a second book in mind or not?
There's definitely a second book that will be coming, and I'm hopefully, well, my intent around it is around conscious living and being able to give more advice is the wrong word. I think more of a story around practically grounding, living consciously and taking conscious footsteps in your life. But we're way off from that one just yet.
Okay, yeah, you haven't put pen to paper on that one.
No, not yet. Not yet.
Yeah, maybe yeah. So your future self probably needs that one too, but
correct.
Not sure how soon it needs it.
Yeah. Exactly.
You never know that. Yeah, the something might occur that has that happen. And it's like, before we started recording, I was telling Dion that out of the blue this morning at our home, we've got a tawny mouth owl sitting on our veranda, and it was there before I started recording. I checked; it'd been there for an hour and a half, like from 8 o'clock in the morning till nearly 9:30, and very, very rare sight. And my wife and I are enthralled with the thing, and we're keeping our dog inside away so she doesn't get out there on the veranda and chase it. And she loves doing that with birds. And for the listeners, it's very hard to see, very camouflaged, just sitting up close to a pole. 3 magpies came along, sat next to it and started squawking very loudly, got my wife's attention. And once her attention was there, they flew off. I'm now thinking in my mind, okay, today's a whole new day. Like, what's going on in our lives from this point on? Like, because some people think I'm nuts. Some people would think, oh, you're on the money. Like, to me, it's a sign. Like, owls hang around in the dark, not on a bright sunny morning, or right up. It's not in a tree up somewhere. It's sitting on our the veranda hand railing, and it just keeps looking around. It's to sit there in one spot for an hour and a half in the middle of the sunlight belting on it. I'm like, it's the start of a new day for us. Something's going on we need to observe, and I see it as a wonderful sign. So I've got a pocket spirit animal guidebook, and I've sort of been flicking through that. And I think it's an American book, and it doesn't specifically list the tawny frogmouth, which potentially they don't have in the US. I have no idea. I'm not an owl expert. But after this, I will be Googling it a little bit more to see what the meaning is. Because we are too. We get a few snakes. And when we first moved here, my wife was not real happy with them. But I've read a few stories about how wonderful and how blessed you are when you actually see a snake. Yeah, she's a lot better now. There can be message. It can be a synchronistic sign for. I'm not saying that every time you see one it is, but it can be.
Very auspicious sign. And if nothing at all, an invitation just to slow down and enjoy what's around you, because we sometimes we sometimes miss it when we've got the busyness of our days, that we don't get to enjoy the small things that are often really incredible.
Yeah. All right. So in the show notes, I'm going to have contact details for you and for people to buy the book. Where are they? Is it on Amazon or is it direct from you?
Yeah, it is on Amazon, or you can go to consciousfootsteps.com, and we ship worldwide. But if you're more comfortable with Amazon and that's your preferred way to buy, just search Conscious Footsteps and it will come up in the search.
All right. So we'll have those links in the show notes. So apart from that sort of stuff, is there anything that we haven't talked about the book or about anything else in general that you'd like to mention before we go?
No, I think we've had a really great discussion. If anyone wants to reach out or ask further questions, please feel free. Always love to engage with a new audience and to talk about the book more.
Excellent. All right. And we look forward to the second one.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Dion.
Thanks, Don.
Well, we're at the end of another thought-provoking episode. Remember to subscribe so you'll be alerted to new episodes. I want to say thank you to the men who are joining me on this journey of intuitive development. I truly hope our time together has expanded your reality and reinforced trust in your ever-reliable gut feeling. Embrace your intuition. It will not lead you astray. Until next time, stay tuned, stay curious, and trust your gut.